Good afternoon and welcome. We will start shortly. We're just waiting for participants to arrive. Hi everyone. We're just waiting for some more people to dial in. It's 12:02. I can see that some more people are dialing in. We'll just give it one other minute and then we will proceed. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Tech Women celebrating the Ada Lovelace Day. I would first like to introduce the Chair of Tech Women New Zealand, Eva Sherwood.
Thank you, Amanda. Welcome everyone to the call. We're still creeping up on the numbers, but hopefully anyone who joins late just has to miss my rant. And you still get to hear our wonderful speakers. So thank you for everyone joining on their lunchtime today on Ada Lovelace Day. And I'll just do a massive shout out now to all of our amazing speakers we've got today who've given up their time to share their stories with you. So thank you to all of you. So Tech Women, for those who haven't heard of us before, or maybe you've been invited by a friend to this session, we're a passionate group of New Zealand tech, digital and ICT focused individuals. We work together to address one of the major challenges to the successful growth of tech in New Zealand, and that is a shortage of women in tech roles. If you haven't already signed up to our newsletter, please do. It's a really great way to understand what we're doing, any other events and initiatives coming up. So just jump on to techwomen.nz, sign up to the newsletter and you'll be across all the things we are doing. So I wanted to kind of open today by explaining what Ada Lovelace Day is. So the purpose of the day, which was created I think in 2009, is to raise the profile of women in STEM, of which most of you will be some of those women. It's a fact that there are fewer women than men in fields like science, technology, engineering and maths, despite the fact that girls do better at boys in these subjects at school. Many don't go on to study them at university, and then even fewer of us go on to get jobs in these fields. The reason for this inequality are many. Some issues such as social pressure on girls and women to pursue suitable careers, subtle misogyny in higher education in the workplace, and a lack of support for women who wish to have a family or reskill when entering the workforce. they're complex problems we need to understand. But there is one issue that we can focus on quite easily, and that is the focus of role models. There are very few women role models in STEM, and those of you who've been to kind of science and technology conferences or have watched TV documentaries or listened to all of the tech startups in Silicon Valley, we've got a real absence of female role models. So Ada Lovelace Day was actually created to shine a light on this issue. So who's Ada? So Ada was born in 1815 and actually collaborated with the inventor Charles Babbage on his general purpose computing machine. So a lot of us would have heard about Charles Babbage, but not many of us would have heard about Ada. So she published what we would now call a computer program, whilst Babbage had written fragments of the program before. Lovelace was the most complete and elaborate and first published on essentially modern computer programming. So she was kind of written out of history. Charles Babbage took the main role in our textbooks, and I guess this is an opportunity for us to sing from the rooftops the amazing stories we've got as women in these fields. Just before I hand back to Amanda, I just want to say that although today's session is really focused on women and on us as individuals, I want you to know that tech women absolutely see it's not just on females to bear the weight of change in this industry. We've got massive societal and institutional changes that need to be made, and we do a lot of work in those areas as well. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoy the session with this focus on kind of individual personal development. And yeah, thank you again for choosing to celebrate Ada Lovelace Day with Tech Women.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you for the introduction. To be honest, I didn't know very much about Ada Lovelace Day at all until early on this year. So it's been really fantastic to be a part of this webinar. I'm excited to host and present and have a little bit of time to talk to you all, because I think our messaging is going to be important for women who are looking to either move around within the IT industry in STEM, or to apply for roles within IT and STEM, or who are hiring managers looking to attract more women into their teams and into their industry. So today we have a panel of very skilled women in their areas of expertise, and we're going to be discussing several things, one of which, as Eva touched on, was part of our responsibility as women to understand what our natural hesitancies and considerations are as women. So it has been shown statistically through reports that women have a tendency to apply for a job, not just IT and STEM, but that's obviously what we're focusing on here, where we feel we have 80 to 100% of the criteria that the job description is looking for. Whereas men tend to respond a lot earlier in their comfort zone, around 50 to 60%. Women tend to consider things such as what will be the travel implications and the on-call implications or shift work implications. How will that affect my family unit and my partner and my children's after-school activities, etc. So they tend to think of these things up front. So what we're trying to encourage people that are hiring, writing job descriptions, is to bear those sort of things in mind if they're wanting to attract women into their team, because that's how women tend to read a job advert initially. The other thing that women resonate well to is the wording that's used in job descriptions. Now, IT job descriptions are pretty dry. There's lots of ticking boxes, what certificates, what have you done over 3 years, what, you know, so it's quite dry and, you know, dull, to be honest. So women have a tendency, not just women, men also resonate to these words, but we have a tendency to resonate better to nurturing words or team words, collaboration, communication. those sort of things. So we are encouraging those that write job descriptions to add more of that information in, traditionally known as the softer skills. We shall also be talking today about softer skills, now being called, and I love this, power skills. And these are skills for men and women, but they are the more nurturing skills which are now being proactively sought for roles within corporate companies. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague, Tasha Stace.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? I'll take that as a yes, thumbs up, excellent. Thank you, Amanda, for that introduction. My name is Tasha. Yes, I know the spelling belies the pronunciation, but my mum had several changes of mind during the naming process. I currently work at Enterprise IT/Servian, which is a growing consulting company, and I work with Amanda and have done so, well, not with Amanda, but at EIT for the last 8 years. I've spent the last 20 years in IT, which is a very scary thought, having fallen into it initially as application support. Then one day, sitting in a recruitment consultant's office, looking for something more, I was informed about a DBA role and asked if I would be interested. Yes, I thought before uttering those terrible words that women should not, but I don't have the right skill set or experience. Thank goodness for the consultant, female, saying, let's put your CV up and see what happens. And here I am 15 years later, working as the Oracle DBA team lead with a desire for more. As we all know, IT and other industries are still male dominated, which interests me as I grew up in the 80s with the girls who can do anything ads. Does anyone else remember those? Luckily, I had a mother who backed me on this as well. She would tell me how she wanted to go to university, but was never encouraged to. And even if women did get to university in the 60s, it was often to do music or art, not to mock those careers. I was regularly told not to get tied down young, which is ironic, as the message seemed to switch when she reached that 60-year-old mark and was wanting grandchildren. Anyway, it got me thinking, with all the opportunities that we have as women now, why are we still not seeing women in higher level roles? Why is it that girls are outstripping boys at school, but not in the workforce? Women make amazing students and employees. They put their heads down and they get the job done. They get up at 5 to take the kids to swimming. They make it to the office for the morning stand-up and then back again at 4 for after-school activities. Washing, dinner, more work, rinse and repeat. You get the picture, right? Women and girls put their heads down and get the job done. Men get the job done, but they are also much more likely to promote their abilities and be vocal about their achievements without feeling that it's bragging. Of course, you must have the actual skills to back it up. But I was encouraged as a child, but I was also conditioned that girls and boys behave differently. Girls are the looker-afters, they behave better and they are not as vocal. Even I, in the 2020s, am guilty of conditioning my two girls. When they win something, I've often caught myself saying, don't tell your friends, you might offend them, or don't post that photo of my beautiful child because I'm worried the other mums will talk, and they do. Are we as women conditioned not to stand out and self-promote? And is this even worse for women in IT? An industry that is known for the owl or the thinker personality type, the quieter personalities. Well, I think we need to start turning this on its head. Women in IT need to promote ourselves and support each other and be seen and recognised for our skill set, the power skills, and as Amanda says. No more quietly waiting for recognition. Now, don't get me wrong, I think women have come a very long way, but I still think we have a way to go. I was very lucky. I had a supportive team lead who saw potential in me and encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone. But I also had a turning point when I was supported and encouraged by other women who made me realise I had lots to offer, both technically and the traditional female skill set, the power skills, communication. We all know women are great at this. Leadership, empathy, organisational skills, thinking outside of the box. Sorry for the management speak, but don't underrate these skills. With the growth of enterprise IT over the last several years and my role as team lead, I've been increasingly involved in recruiting. I would love to hire another woman into our team. I am currently the only female out of 11 consultants. The SQL Server team is outstripping us with 2 females. I've managed to interview 2 women, and I checked my records, out of 19 candidates, and I have hired 0. How can I get more women to apply for our roles? Now, Amanda turned me onto this one. We need to be smarter at how we write our job adverts. There are plenty of resources with guidelines on how to do this, but in the interim, my advice when reading that job advert that caught your eye. Number 1, read the advert with a grain of salt. I read an article recently that said, and I quote, "Men generally overestimate their abilities and performance, while women underestimate both." Note, of course, this is not specific to just women, but definitely more common and something I myself have been guilty of. Anyway, back to the article, often referred to as the confidence gap. Women are effectively screening themselves out of the candidate pool before they even apply. As Amanda has mentioned, women usually feel they need to meet all of the job's criteria, while men typically apply if they only meet 60% of the requirements. Meeting all the criteria in the advert is not what I'm looking for. More on this later. Don't be afraid to ask for flexibility rather than just assuming they won't offer it. If someone can demonstrate where they have achieved in the past, then I will work with them around flexibility. And as long as they are respectful of that flexibility, the terms laid out and agreed to, and I can still offer a coverage for our clients. I myself work 7 hours a day. I'm up at 6:30, and when my children were young, I made up for lost hours at night. Structure childcare around core hours. Now, some studies may disagree with me, and I've had this conversation recently. But when my kids were younger, I looked at kindy, but here the hours were 9:30 to 2:30. To me, this was not going to allow me to commit the core hours I needed to do to my employer and to my team. I needed to be there to support my team as well as my children. Now, Montessori offered me that precious extra hour or 2 to commit to my work responsibilities, while not really hindering my family responsibilities. But it also made me feel that I was balancing my commitments, and I wanted to make sure I was giving my best to both family and work as much as possible. Again, this isn't easy. There was more than one occasion when I was resentful at having to attend a function instead of being home with my girls or having to work during bedtime. Also note, I have 2 men in my team that have single parent responsibilities. One works 1 long week and 1 short week. The other has a few hours off in the afternoon and is back online after the school run. When they were working in the same team, they worked it so their weeks didn't coincide. I encourage everyone to be supportive of each other in the team, and on the whole, I think it works. My opinion is that flexibility and support for mums and men ends up benefiting everyone. I certainly found this is the case for me. Now, studies have shown that women are more likely to stay with a company, as well as grow and contribute to the company's growth and direction. This is also normalising flexible work, meaning there will be no more sideways looks when that mum heads off early. I've had a lot of part-timer comments in my time, mostly in jest, but actually pretty hurtful. So the more normalised flexibility becomes, the less there will be of those funny looks. I, as a hirer and a team lead, am more interested in your ability to prove to me that you understand the basics of the role. I don't need you to recite the commands. I just need to know that you understand the implications and the process. I also don't need you to be certified, and I'll probably be in trouble for saying this. I understand certifications are great for the company and they're necessary for partnerships. However, in my experience, it has been that practicality and the certification means very little. So if you're not certified, don't think it will count against you. Now, a degree in IT, I've seen this on so many adverts and I hate it. I didn't put it on the last advert I was involved in, and I always ignore it on job adverts. I don't have an IT degree. I have a Bachelor of Science in Geography. Now, obviously in the DBA industry, you need to have some experience or some training in IT, but for the level that we are hiring, it is not something I'm necessarily looking for. So don't count yourself out if you don't have a degree in IT. Promote your emotional intelligence, your attention to detail, and your organisational skills, something women often excel at and is highly desirable. Although I'm not infallible, I have an attention to detail that was refined when I had children. The ability to know and find the exact location of that one pair of black leggings that must be worn to school that very day. I want people to see where we can improve as a team. Automation, standardization, all those buzzwords that are actually really, really good things to have in an IT environment. Now, finally, empathy and social skills. Fostering a happy and healthy team means we need people that can empathize and communicate effectively with each other and clients. Now, again, these on the whole are skills that women have naturally. I've seen plenty of examples of technically brilliant people that had a lack of ability to understand other people's situations, to put yourself in their shoes, and as a result have caused resentment or conflict. Now, I feel I've only just scratched the surface and that there is so much more that could be said. But in summary, don't count yourself out of a job before you've even applied. Now, I understand IT, and especially technical IT, is a difficult place for women to work with families, long hours, competing with men that have wives to look after the home, on call, out of hours work. But things are becoming more flexible. Don't be afraid to back yourself. Speak up about what you have been good at. Who cares if some people say you're full of yourselves? The more we do it, the more those people will be in the minority. Now, I know it sounds corny, but create a 5-year plan. I used to hate this term, and when people asked me that, I was like, not even on my radar. But I think a development plan to get where you want to be and make it realistic, factor in family life, is a brilliant idea. Now, share this with your employer or prospective employer. Think about and promote what you have to offer an employer. I've thought about it a bit when writing this, and it's reaffirmed to me how much I do have to offer. And I'm also getting started on refreshing my development plan. Now, I hope you found this interesting. It's certainly inspired me to work harder on doing what I can do to encourage that next person to apply for one of our Oracle roles. To maybe be a female, and maybe we'll actually start to beat the SQL Server team at gender equality.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Tash. That was really, really good. And so much of what you said resonated for me. As a mum, as a working mum, the black leggings, so much of what you said. So I also think, you know, that family balance has possibly improved with COVID. And the writing of job descriptions, which is going to segue me nicely to our next speaker, Emma Southwood, who is CEO of 40 Foot Recruitment.
Thank you, Amanda. Welcome, everyone. I am CEO of 40 Foot. We specialise in technology recruitment here in New Zealand. And before I built this company, I had roles at the Warehouse Group and IAG in areas not really in recruitment at all. I was in strategy, program management and governance, a little bit of HR in there. And like many women, I was on mat leave when I got the call that my role was to be made redundant. So I had the choice between taking another version of that role or taking redundancy. And I guess I have a little bit of an appetite for risk, and I had a baby on my hip. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to take redundancy and take a punt. As a woman in technology, I've got a really keen interest at the moment, particularly post-COVID, on what the market is doing and what the economy is doing. There are some forces at play that we really haven't seen before. And what I want to kind of leave with you today is that it is really becoming a perfect storm for anyone who wants to change roles and get that next career step. So I'm going to be a little bit structured today because we've only got 10 minutes together, and I want to be punchy and give you 3 insights about the current market and 3 actions that I think you could take if you wanted to reposition your career and get a different role. So let's get going. Insight number 1. Post-COVID, companies are doing their own recruitment. So recruitment budgets have been slashed and companies are saying, you know what, I'm going to throw my own ad up on Seek and I am going to give it a punt and see who applies. I guess the challenge with that is that, as some a little factoid for you guys, 83% of the roles that we filled last year as a tech recruiter in New Zealand were not through SEEK applications. They were headhunted. Okay, so what we've got is a little bit of a difference in behaviour. We've got clients that are saying, I'm going to put the ad up on SEEK, see who applies, but candidate behaviour isn't quite aligned to that. Candidate behaviour is that a lot of the good people are not actually looking for roles. And we know this, right? Because you're not on SEEK 24/7. Sometimes you just kind of dip your foot in to see what's out there. But that is really creating a bit of a difference in the market at the moment. The second insight for you is that there is a chronic candidate shortage. This, in my mind, is being driven by two things. The first thing is that candidates that are in good roles don't want to leave. It's a weird market. There is a global pandemic. There's a natural inclination, I think, as humans, that if we're in a good gig or a stable gig, let's just stay there, see what happens. Okay, so you've got that going on. The second thing that's driving this candidate shortage is that the borders are closed, and they're closed to tech candidates. We've got several candidates that were granted visas for technology roles. You know, we've got a .NET developer sitting in Sri Lanka. We've got a Linux guy sitting in Argentina. It's a challenging environment because of the border. Okay, so this is creating a bit of a shortage that is going to start coming to the fore. In fact, I was watching the news last night, if anyone caught it, and there is actually a group of CEOs who have gotten together to help the government solve the issue of finding talent across particularly technology, agri, and infrastructure projects. They're really short, okay? So the third insight is that the diversity agenda hasn't changed just because of COVID or just because candidates are sparse at the moment. Companies still want to find women. And I hear it all day long as a recruiter. How do I get more women in my team? It's a real problem. And so you can see the storm brewing. Can you see it? We've got companies that are advertising on SEEK. We've got candidate shortage, and we've got diversity agenda is still trying to forge ahead. So I'm going to give you 3 actions, okay, that I really believe could help. The first one is proactively apply for the roles that you like on SEEK. Apply for them. They are unlikely to be roles that would be impacted by COVID. They're likely to be critical roles to advance technology projects at the moment. Any non-essential roles are going to be on hold. Companies are tentative. They don't want to fill their books with people where they don't need them. So the roles up there are critical tech roles for usually quite exciting projects at the moment that have to forge on regardless of COVID. Go easy on these companies. Some of them are used to having recruiters like me help them through the hiring process. So if you get a little bit of a gap between your interview and getting some feedback, be a bit proactive, help them through it. Give them a call. If you don't know what the next steps are, ask them. They might not know either, okay? So you might need to be quite proactive, but apply, get involved, apply for these roles and help them through the process. Ask them what, you know, ask them for feedback, ask them for next steps, and just get involved. Action number 2, I'm gonna say here, meet with a really good technology recruiter in your area. We love having coffee. We love telling you about the market. We want to understand what your next step is, even if it's not a current role that's on the books. You know, there's also some deep relationships there whereby a lot of the roles that we get are not actually advertised roles. It might just be an understanding that we have with a company where they say, hey, if you get a good person in this general area, send them to me. Okay, so it doesn't have to be that you're ready to move now. Maybe you just want to get some insights and understand who's hiring, what's going on in the market, what projects are paused, what projects are forging ahead. reach out to any good technology recruiter worth their salt would love to share their knowledge with you. And action number three, is realize your worth. You are in demand. I don't know how else to say this. You are top quality and you are in demand, okay? So if you are a woman in technology, there has never been a better time, in my opinion, to get your next role. So think about what you need in your next role. Get clear on that. Do you need some people management? Do you want to get head down and just code with no people management? Get clear on what you need in your next role. And do you want to work for a large corporate? Do you want to work for a specialist tech company? Get clear. But whatever you decide, time is now, okay? And we need you. We need you. We need you. Tech needs you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was fantastic. I can see some questions are coming through for the question and answer session afterwards. So what you have said, what you both said, has really resonated with a lot of people, and thank you very much for that. So now, complementing that, we're going to move to Julie and Tina. And just before we do, keep the questions coming. When we wrap up our 10-minute panel presentations, we'll run through some of the questions and answers. So looking forward to seeing more in the chat field. Julie and Tina, over to you.
Hi. So we'll introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to take the first 5 minutes and Tina's going to take the second 5 minutes. We're doing a bit of a tag team today. So I'm Julie Fitzgerald. I'm the Organisational Learning Manager at Z Energy. I've been with Z for longer than I'd probably like to admit, but more than 15 years. So since it was Shell, and I've worked in a variety of different roles, but learning's my real passion. So that's where I'm working at the moment. This is Tina.
Hi, my name's Tina Frew. So I work in our strategy team here at Z. I've been here about 7 or 8 years now in a variety of roles, and quite a passion and interest of mine on low carbon technologies. And prior to that, I had 11 years with the Air Force. So I originally trained as an aeronautical engineer. So look forward to sharing with you some reflections and things that have helped me along the way.
But one of the things that that I wanted to talk about, so first want to debunk the myth that women are different from men from a basic skills and talents perspective. I think there are cultural influences that influence how we are conditioned to behave, but at the heart of it, there is no evidence that suggests that we are less skilled in maths, technology, engineering, any of those areas, nor is there evidence to suggest that we are more nurturing, better at communicating, or any of those softer skills as well. However, often culturally, the way we're conditioned means that we end up in areas that are on the more softer side of things, and less towards the technology and the engineering and the maths, mainly because of what society has, or what Tasha talked about, you know, what your parents might have told you. But one thing that has been proven in loads of research studies, that there is a confidence gap between men and women. So the stats that Amanda quoted earlier around, you know, women less likely to apply for jobs unless they've got a whole bunch of the skills and talents, men more likely to give it a punt. That's been reinforced in a number of different places. And again, I don't think that that's innate. I think that's conditioned. So my view is that there are plenty of women I know who are really confident, and it's a mixture of them giving it a nudge, but also them having the right people in their corner to support them to give stuff a nudge. So what I'm going to share a little bit about today is the giving it a nudge side of things, because I think sometimes we do get lucky in the support that we get, but we can always give it a nudge. So the first thing is power skills versus soft skills. So Josh Bersin, who I must admit, I'm a bit of a fangirl of Josh Bersin. If you Google Josh Bersin power skills, there's a great article on his website. And he says we need to stop talking about soft skills and start talking about power skills. And the reason he says that is by calling the skills like curiosity, communication, collaboration, teamwork, learning, soft skills, we diminish their value. And in a world that is changing at the rate the world is changing at the moment, people who have got really strong learning agility are gold in an organisation. People who can collaborate and adapt are gold in an organisation, because nothing is standing still. So I think even if for ourselves, if we've kind of seen ourselves as being people who are good at soft skills, but maybe not as strong in some of those harder skills or technical skills, if we even just in our heads call them power skills, it can really reframe the way you talk about the strengths that you bring. So that's the first thing. So Google that article. I'm not going to read them all to you, but Google the article, have a look at them and see if any resonate for you. The second thing I think that's really important in the giving it a nudge is having a really good development plan. And our other speakers have highlighted the importance of that as well. And I don't necessarily think you need to know what you want to be when you grow up. And actually, what you want to be when you grow up in today's world probably won't exist by the time you get there. So if you say you want to be the organisational learning manager at Z in 5 years' time, I'm willing to bet my role won't exist in 5 years' time. It will have morphed into something else. So being much more clear about what are your skills, what do you love to do, what are you good at, and being really, really clear on that can then, when you're reading a job ad on Seek or talking to a recruiter, go, actually, yeah, this role, new role, I've never heard of this thing before, but it's got all of the elements that I'm looking for. So being really clear on what matters to you, what you love to do and what you're really good at can really help you. And I've done loads of career coaching over the years. And what I've seen time and time again is people coming up with a good development plan and then not doing anything about it. And the reason that we do that is, well, I know the reason I've done that is I've prioritised the priorities of others over what really matters to me. So I work full time. I have 2 kids. You know, I'm juggling a lot anyway, and loads of us are juggling stuff. And so if my boss makes a request of me and I'd carved out some time to do some development, I might drop off dialing into that webinar to learn about Ada Lovelace Day because I'm going to prioritise the request of my manager. However, if we don't prioritise our development, nothing will change. So first of all, kind of connecting with why your development really matters and prioritising it is really important. And I think just in terms of my top tips for a development plan is take some time to reflect on what you love to do. So the things that bounce you out of bed in the morning, the things that people give you great feedback about, really reflect on that stuff. You don't need to figure out the role that you want to do, just figure out what you love to do, but also be clear on what you don't love to do. I don't think anybody ever gets a job where they bounce out of bed in the morning to do it by spending a load of time developing skills that they really hate. So being really clear on what you love and what you don't love and being able to articulate that through great examples to an employer will really set you up well for success. So yeah, so a rebrand, soft skills to power skills, get really clear on what you love to do. And I use the word love deliberately, not like, love, and what you're good at, and let go of the things that you don't like to do and be really clear that you don't want those in future roles. And don't feel that you've got to box yourself into a job description, box yourself into the skills that you want to use in your jobs. And I think that will really help. And here's a lovely case study. Tina, who's somebody who's really focused on her development, had a great development plan and had some great results. So I'll hand over to you.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone. So I thought today I might kind of reinforce a couple of points that a number of others have coincidentally also shared and kind of illustrate that through some practical examples in STEM. What I thought I'd start with actually is a quote that I've written down in my little book of Good Gen, which has like really helped me overcome some of the things that people have been putting on the table today. And so that is, courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the belief that something else matters more. So I kind of want to underline that second part of the quote in terms of trying to unpack what is it that kind of matters more to you that would help you overcome some of those sort of barriers that might get in the way. So one thing I think is really good to spend some time on, which Julie's already touched on, is getting clear on what your North Star is. So it was about sort of 5 or 6 years ago, where I was kind of going through a bit of a shift in my career, and I wanted to get into sort of sustainability and low carbon fuel opportunities, that sort of thing. And I remember kind of investing some time trying to sit down and figure out, you know, what are the conditions under which I thrive, the work environment, what kind of support network would I be, what kind of organizational outcomes would I be after. And I really spent you know, a couple of weeks and spoke with a couple of people to try and help me formulate that idea. And it kind of got down to be like a plan on a page. And what I found really interesting was that once I kind of had invested that time and had that clarity, it sort of became really apparent all of the opportunities around me that I don't believe I necessarily would have seen without that clarity. And so to give you one example, it was about 2 weeks after that, an opportunity came up to join the World Energy Council's Future Energy Leader program. And that was a forum where they selected about 100 people from around the world in this space, and it kind of gave you immediate access to global leaders, mentorship opportunities. You got to get involved in work programs. I ended up in Ethiopia looking at waste to energy plants, and Turkey looking at how they distribute electricity around their company. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, going through that simple exercise, I could never have foreseen all of the amazing people I met and the experiences I had. So that's one thing I would say, is that things really become clear once you've kind of invested that time, and there's lots of exciting stuff out there in STEM. Another kind of point I'd want to hit on, we talked about, you know, a number of people, Tash and Julie, have talked about having the right support network around you, which I think is really important. And one thing I think is that backing yourself doesn't mean doing it by yourself. And, you know, over the years, I've had a number of mentors, and the majority of the time, actually, that's not been through formal mentorship programs. It's been looking at, you know, what's kind of my need at the time, and looking out there to people I've sort of viewed as role models, or could help sort of complement maybe a gap I've seen in myself. And so definitely worked with a number of mentors. And to give you sort of one specific example, when I first joined the strategy team here at Z, I went into a new position. It was a biofuels strategy manager. So that was kind of looking at, you know, new advanced technologies and how might we commercialize those and bring those to New Zealand. And so for me, that was definitely a step up in career level, and it was a real blank sheet of paper in terms of where I could take it. And so I sort of had all of these like imposter syndrome things you might have heard about, and, you know, how would I have a credible voice, you know, with our exec team and externals and things like that. And so my support, or the right support network for me at that time, included working with a coach for 3 months, and she was the right coach for what I was needing at that time, but she materially helped me sort of have that confidence to engage and back myself. So again, one thing I would say is that kind of understand what it is that might help you thrive, whether it's settling into a new role or trying to figure out what's next. So support networks really do count. The third thing, which I think a number of people have talked about, is don't be afraid to put your hand up for things if you don't tick all of the boxes. So there was those stats we shared at the start around, you know, females only apply for things that they think 60% of what's on the list they meet. I personally am a believer of, like, if you have the passion, a willingness to learn, I think that, you know, there are a lot of things that are learnable, and don't kind of not put your head in the ring for that reason. And again, just to kind of underline that point of something else mattering more, just an example back from when I was in the Air Force, actually, there was a really exciting opportunity that came up where we were looking to introduce a new fleet of helicopters. This was the NH90 fleet. It was really kind of cutting edge composite fly-by-wire, exciting stuff. And I nearly didn't apply for that role, because I kind of looked down the list, and there were a number of things which, you know, I wasn't the perfect fit, but I thought I could learn it. And I thought there was a number of solid enough things that would kind of put me in the ring. And I nearly didn't go for that. And all I would say is that I did end up getting that role, and that was an opportunity that Took me over to Europe. I was able to kind of work with Eurocopter, Rolls-Royce, learning all of this amazing technology stuff. I was able to be part of a team back here in New Zealand, setting up a brand new facility and squadron, and introducing these new aircraft here to New Zealand. And again, you can never predict all of the opportunities that are out there, but I just hope the point I'm trying to make is just make sure you put your head in the ring, because there are some amazing things that you can't always predict that could be possible if you kind of go to that place. So that's kind of all I'd leave you with, is invest some time in your North Star. It really helps you see opportunities that you might otherwise not. Make sure you've got that support network around you and you're not a failure for needing that. I think we all do. And don't be afraid to put your head in the ring. So that's how I'd close.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Thanks to all of our speakers. I personally always find this very fascinating and interesting. I think there have been some really good points. As you can see, we have some questions coming up as well. So we will go through those questions. And if anybody else would like to ask a question, we will. I've also sent through the link for Josh Burson. I'm all about the power skills. I think that's fantastic. So that's great. And obviously, as Julie said, and we've reiterated, the skill set is not gender specific. It's just that culturally we tend to have fallen into these different roles. And I know colleagues of mine respond equally as well as I do to great words like collaboration and communication, etc. So to round that off for those that are listening. So Emma, we've had a few questions come through about the junior skill level, junior candidates in the market. Can you see them okay? Can you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you please respond to our audience for that?
Yeah, so I can see there's been a few questions about, is there still a candidate shortage for junior candidates? My answer to that is junior roles are always competitive, right? That kind of goes without saying. So that, competitiveness has not disappeared. But if there was ever a good time as a junior, it's going to be now for the next 12 to 18 months, because companies are pivoting and realizing that they simply cannot access all of the skill sets that they need. So we know that there's pockets where I'm thinking like, you try and get a React Native developer in New Zealand, very challenging. There's only a few, right? And the ones that are here tend to be already in great roles. That hasn't changed, but companies are changing their mindset around training and bringing on slightly more junior people, or maybe even bringing on an intermediate for a role that might traditionally have been a senior role. So I think company appetite is changing, and it has to change because there's simply going to be a supply and demand challenge. That's all there is to it. Someone also asked a question about regions. The regions that are promoting their and still kind of focusing on their diversity strategies, I'm seeing as Auckland and Wellington. Those are the regions where the focus on recruiting women is the strongest. It's not to say that other regions don't want to hire women, they do, but I think those are probably the areas where, especially working with any government clients, there is pressure, for our clients that work with government. They want to have women. It's simple. They want to have a fair representation. And someone else also asked a question about salary. My experience is that I have never had a woman apply for a role who has been too expensive. So lift your game, ladies. Lift your expectation.
That's
never had a female candidate too expensive for a role.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Emma. And I think...
Can I add a few things, Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. I have opinions. So I just wanted to say case study on the looking at more junior people than we would normally. Absolutely, that's happening at Deloitte. We have a large technology practice, people in like ServiceNow, Salesforce, SAP, Oracle. A lot of the senior or intermediate to senior people would often get from offshore, and they would immigrate with our support to New Zealand to work on our New Zealand clients. That tap has at least temporarily been turned off, and I can absolutely say we are looking at a wider sphere of people here in New Zealand who are willing to spend some time with us, training and developing, and we're definitely trying to think differently about our recruitment, which I think creates more opportunity for people at the junior to intermediate level. So yeah, I think that is changing, and I think we certainly haven't seen a slowdown in the technology area. I think there's more and more work coming through into digital now, even though we are seeing some other industries slow down. I certainly am not seeing that in our space. The other thing that's kind of related to that COVID change that's happening at the moment with the regions is I think people who used to think that you needed to be in head office, Wellington, Auckland, maybe Christchurch or Dunedin, that is gone. If you're an amazing talent and you are hanging out in Nelson, you live in Wanaka, wherever you are, I think this is absolutely the time to play and say, well, it's remote working by default for a lot of companies now and probably forever. The idea that you need to physically be in the office with people, I think, is gone. So I think, again, there are opportunities for people who are living outside of those main centres to be applying for roles that might say on Seek, Wellington or Auckland. But don't worry about that. Just say, hey, I'm great and I can work remotely. Yeah, thanks, Amanda.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Eva. And yeah, I do think COVID has changed things for the better, and also that life balance that you spoke about, Tasha. So we have some more questions coming through, and a few people have asked about mentoring. The mentoring idea sounds great. How would we go about it? So Eva, obviously Tech Women New Zealand has a mentoring program. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, and then maybe Julie, if you could talk a bit about it.
Yeah, so Tech Women, we run a formal mentoring circles program. We have done for the last 3 years, so we'll do another intake for that early next year. But that's a program where you have 2 mentors, 6 mentees, and you meet as a group. And there's some really wonderful benefits to that, in that it's not just a one-on-one coaching. You get the opportunity to have 2 mentors instead of 1. Plus you get to make a whole bunch of peer mentoring connections. And I think particularly for women, if you've had time out of the workforce and you've come back in, it's actually those social connections with people that are missing. So this is a nice way to kind of make some new connections with people who are in a like level to you but are working at other companies. And again, I think that's a benefit. Sometimes we can get a little bit, oh well, this is the way my company works, and we get a bit blinkered, and it's really nice to talk to someone who works down the road in a totally different organisation, and they can go, you know what, Eva, that's not normal. It's not normal what you're going through, and just give you a bit of perspective, because yeah, that's quite important. So that is a program that we run, and again, if you sign up to the newsletter, we'll make sure that you know about the application process for that. Next year, IT professionals, if anyone's involved with them, they're also running a mentoring circles program. I know Christchurch, Canterbury Tech, are running a mentoring, a one-on-one mentoring program. So there are formal kind of mentoring programs being run by a lot of industry groups. But then I think maybe I'll hand over to you, Julie, because it doesn't have to be formal, does it?
No, and probably my experience is more like Tina's from an internal perspective. And I think starting with that, what do you like, what are you good at, and what do you want to work on, what do you want to get better at, and then looking out for people that you admire. And so that could be internally. Actually, I want to get better at, challenging stuff or disagreeing with my boss or whatever it is, and just finding somebody who you think's really good at that and seeking them out and going, hey, I've noticed you're really good at this. I'm working on it. Could I spend some time with you to learn about it? But being specific about the request, because I've had people ask me for coaching or mentoring but it's very vague, and it's like, well, what is it that you want help with? So being really clear with the person about the thing that you want some help with and asking them for specific help, and starting by complimenting them opens the door really well as well. Like, I've seen you good at this, could you help me with that? I think it's really useful. It's probably a lovely segue into, there's a question there about imposter syndrome as well. And I think mentoring and coaching relationships are a great way of addressing that. So if you are sort of sitting back going, oh, I could never do this, or I'm struggling, or whatever, you know, having relationships with people who you admire, who give you feedback about how you're going, is one way that you can kind of unpick that and undo the imposter syndrome. Because once somebody gives you feedback, especially if you admire them, that actually you are good at that thing, I do back you to do that thing, that can really help. So if that's something you're struggling with, I think you know, those relationships can be great. The other thing I recommend that people do is, if you're feeling like you're a bit, you know, you're a bit of an imposter, start by just writing down all the things that you're proud of. So make a list of all of the accomplishments, all of the things that you've achieved, all the things that you're proud of, all the things you've learned, even though it might have been a struggle when you were learning it. Like, remember back to when you started doing the thing and now look at where you're at. Write down all of those examples and just read it through. Couple of things that'll do for you. One is, those are great answers to job interview questions. Tell me about a time when, here's my list. But the other thing, it can really help you when you're looking at a job description to go, oh, I can do that. I have done that before. I've done it in a different context, but I can do it. So that's another way you can kind of mentor yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Julie. And it actually brings us quite nicely. We only have 4 minutes left, but I would like to address Yvonne's question or point around maternity leave. Now, most of us have gone through this. So the maternity leave, the skill gap, we could do like a whole session on this, let's face it, and possibly we will. But I would like you to, you know, as hiring managers, so this will probably be Tasha, Eva, Julie, we have a whopping 4 minutes to give our best line item of advice to the people watching with regard to understanding what we still have to offer when we've been on a maternity gap and we're returning into the market.
I just one to me, having read CVs, is be explicit about your career gaps. Don't bury them in your CV. Be really clear about what it was and why. And as a recruiter, I really value that. And you can add in achievements about the things that you did while you're on leave as well, that show some of those power skills that you may have developed. But yeah, don't hide it. Be mine.
And don't underestimate the power of organisation. When you've been off raising a family, you have planning skills, you have organisation skills, you can multitask. They are all legitimate things in your CV.
Yeah, see, look, technology may move on in the 2 years that you've been in maternity leave, but all those skills that you were using before and you've now used on maternity leave, they have not changed. You've still been honing all of those skills. And they are really, really important when I'm looking at hiring. And if somebody has those skills and they're the right fit for the team, that is more important to me, because you can learn a technical skill, no problem, right? Picking up all those other skills is a lot more difficult.
So fantastic. Look, to all of our panelists and people who are tuned in today, I just want to say thank you so much. We are going to be cut off at 1 o'clock. I want to say thank you very much to all our panelists. It's been fantastic. We have more to talk about. I can see from all the chat that people have found it informative. We have lots more questions that we hope to create another webinar in the future around some of these items. And we have all reiterated, back yourselves. When entering into or changing roles or looking at jobs, give yourself a nudge. As Julie said, back yourself. We look forward to speaking to you in the future. Does anybody have any final things to say?
I'll just say one thing on the maternity leave thing. This is maybe harking back to my earlier comment, which is this isn't all for us to solve. I think the maternity career gap thing is absolutely an institutional and a societal problem. Tech Women is absolutely focused on how do we work with companies on better policies and better methods of getting women back into the workforce. So I think maybe we'll take that one to the companies rather than to the individuals.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, and not just in the IT, but also in other sectors of the market. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.